The date is March 29th, 1987. A cool spring breeze whips through the cavernous Pontiac Silverdome, a structure designed to contain the ferocious energy of a professional football team. But on this night, it struggles to hold the thunderous roar of over 93,000 screaming fans. Inside, under a cascade of blinding spotlights, two men stand in the center of the ring, their hands raised in triumph. Their smiles are as bright as the flashbulbs popping around them. Their synchronized movements a testament to a partnership forged in perfect harmony. They are the Can-Am Connection, Rick Martel and Tom Zenk, and they have just defeated the formidable team of the magnificent Morocco and Cowboy Bob Orton in the opening bout of WrestleMania III. This was not just a victory, it was a coronation. The final moments of the match were a masterclass in tag team synergy. As the monstrous Morocco looked to deliver a decisive blow, the Can-Am Connection's quickness and cohesion proved too much to handle. Martel, a veteran with a champion's instincts, took flight with a breathtaking high crossbody, crashing into Morocco. At the same exact moment, Zenk, ever the strategic partner, executed a subtle, low-to-the-ground maneuver that legendary commentator Gorilla Monsoon would later describe as a little high school trip from behind. It was a perfect storm of timing and teamwork, the kind of move that wins not just matches, but hearts. Martel's pinfall was a foregone conclusion. The crowd erupted, a deafening wave of approval for a team that represented everything they loved about professional wrestling: athleticism, charisma, and a seemingly unstoppable bond. To anyone watching, this was the dawn of a new era. They were young, handsome, and bursting with a kinetic energy that was impossible to ignore. Rick Martel, the savvy veteran with a championship pedigree, was the seasoned leader. Tom Zenk, the youthful American powerhouse, was the charismatic foil. Their style was a ballet of athleticism and coordinated chaos, a whirlwind of dropkicks, high-flying maneuvers, and seamless tag team transitions that left audiences breathless. They moved as one, a single unstoppable force. Their chemistry was not manufactured, it was organic, built on a real-life connection that transcended the scripted world of professional wrestling. Fans believed in them. They had defeated former tag team champions, the Dream Team, and had just vanquished two of the Federation's most notorious villains on the grandest stage of them all. They were a rising tide, and it seemed inevitable that they would soon crash against the shores of Tag Team Gold, a championship victory that would solidify their place in history. And yet, it was all a mirage. Within 4 short months, the Can-Am Connection would be shattered. The partnership that seemed destined for greatness would vanish into the ether, leaving behind only the ghost of what might have been. A team that would be erased from WrestleMania, an infamous duo in the annals of wrestling history for the company that now refused to acknowledge their existence. They were a truncated success story that simply stopped being told. Why? What could have possibly unraveled such a perfect and profitable partnership so quickly? The answer, as it so often is in the cutthroat world of professional wrestling, is a bitter cocktail of greed, betrayal, and a fundamental disagreement over a business built on an illusion of trust. This is the story of the Can-Am Connection. It's a tale that begins not in the spotlight of the Silverdome, but in the gritty, smoke-filled arenas of regional territories. It's the story of two men, both destined for stardom, whose paths converged briefly, brilliantly, and then diverged forever. To understand their story, we must first meet the men themselves. Rick Martel was already a wrestling prodigy. Born Richard Vigneault, he came from a family of wrestlers and had been performing since he was a teenager. He was a master of his craft, a world traveler who had won championships in Canada, Japan, and the United States. He had already tasted Federation Gold, holding the tag team titles with Tony Garea in the early 1980s. Most impressively, he was the American Wrestling Association World Heavyweight Champion for a remarkable 19 months, a reign that cemented his status as a main event player. He was a polished performer, a natural leader with a keen understanding of the wrestling business. Then there was Tom Zenk, a man who, on paper, seemed to be Martel's perfect complement. Zenk, a bodybuilder from Minnesota, was an athletic marvel with movie star looks. He was a product of the legendary Robbinsdale High School wrestling scene, a cradle of future stars like Curt Hennig and Rick Rude. Zenk's path to the World Wrestling Federation was a bit different. He was a protege of Kurt Hennig, who introduced him to Martel. Zenk was the boyfriend of Martel's sister-in-law, a small detail that would prove to be the glue holding their partnership together, until it wasn't. Martel saw something in Zenk, a younger version of himself, and a man he believed had the potential to be a star. When Martel received an offer to return to the Federation, he saw an opportunity not just for himself, but for a tag team that could take the company by storm. He pitched Zenk to Vince McMahon, who, despite not knowing the younger wrestler, trusted Martel's judgment. And so, the Can-Am connection was born. Their arrival in the Federation in late 1986 was nothing short of electrifying. They were an instant hit with the audience. Their high-energy, fast-paced offense was a stark contrast to the more deliberate, brawling styles of many of the tag teams of the era. They embodied the youthful, optimistic spirit of the late 80s. Zenk, with his chiseled physique and flowing hair, and Martel, with his suave confidence and undeniable skill, were a visual match made in wrestling heaven. The audiences were captivated. They were booked to perfection, winning matches against top-tier heel teams and building momentum with every victory. The crescendo of this initial run was, of course, their triumphant opening match at WrestleMania III. It was a career-defining moment, a launching pad that seemed to promise a trajectory straight to the top. But backstage, the perfect facade was beginning to crack. The issues, as is often the case, were rooted in a combination of money and power dynamics. From Zenk's perspective, he was doing all the work. He was the one taking the punishment, the one selling for the opponents, while Martel was the one who got to make the dramatic comebacks and secure the victories. Zenk felt like the junior partner, a feeling that was exacerbated when he began to suspect there was a significant disparity in their pay. Martel, for his part, maintains that they were paid the same amount and that Zenk was simply not prepared for the mental and physical rigors required under the persistent limelight of the World Wrestling Federation. The constant travel, the grueling schedule, and the pressure of being in the biggest wrestling promotion in the world were, according to Martel, too much for Zenk to handle. The simmering tension came to a boil over a financial dispute. Zenk, who claimed to have a weekly salary of $2,500, began to hear whispers from other wrestlers that Martel was being paid significantly more. He confronted Martel, who allegedly lied and said their pay was equal. It was at WrestleMania III, a night that should have been the pinnacle of their partnership, that Zenk received his payout, a check for $10,000. He apparently learned that other wrestlers, seemingly less talented and popular, were earning double that. The final nail in the coffin was the alleged harassment involving Federation officials Terry Garvin and Pat Patterson, which Zenk brought to Martel's attention. Zenk, disillusioned and feeling betrayed by both his partner and the company, abruptly removed himself from the Federation. He left a note for Martel, a silent declaration that their partnership was over. Martel, for his part, was reportedly shocked. He had invested in this partnership, and to have it fall apart so suddenly was a professional and personal blow. He even flew to Minneapolis to try and convince Zenk to return. But Zenk stood firm, refusing to go back. But for Zenk, the story was far from over. In his telling, what followed was a campaign of intimidation. A letter arrived from Vince McMahon himself, claiming that Zenk's departure was hurting Rick's earning potential. A message that, in Zenk's view, confirmed everything he suspected about where the company's loyalties truly lay. The situation escalated when, according to Zenk, the company filed a breach of contract lawsuit against him, not for a token amount, but for a sum that would have, in his words, finished him financially. Faced with potential ruin, Zenk reached out to the McMahon family directly. In a conversation he claimed to have had with Linda McMahon, Zenk said the tone shifted when he brought up leverage of his own. Knowledge of steroid-related activities within the company that, if made public, could prove deeply damaging. The response, he claimed, was not reassurance or negotiation, but what he interpreted as a thinly veiled threat. Whether these events unfolded exactly as Zenk described them may never be fully known, but his account paints a picture of a young wrestler who felt he had been systematically betrayed, first by his partner, then by the company, and finally by a system that seemed designed to crush anyone who dared to challenge it. With Zenk gone, the Federation moved to erase him from history. He was never mentioned by name again on Federation television. He was referred to as Rick Martel's former partner, a nameless ghost haunting Martel's new storyline. Martel, ever the professional, had to adapt. The Federation paired him with Tito Santana, a beloved babyface. They were christened Strikeforce, a team that, on paper, was a resounding success. They went on to win the Tag Team Championship, a feat the Can-Am Connection never achieved. Strikeforce was a solid, successful team. They were skilled, popular, and they held the belts. But something was missing. The Can-Am Connection had a certain magic, a youthful exuberance, and an undeniable chemistry that Strikeforce, for all their success, never quite replicated. Strikeforce was a team that worked. They were two proven veterans who were well-matched and effective. The Can-Am Connection, on the other hand, was a force of nature. Their popularity was not based on their championship run, but on their pure, unadulterated energy and a sense of shared destiny. They were the future, and when they disappeared, the fans were left with a hollow feeling, a sense of what might have been. The tale of the Can-Am Connection is a microcosm of the wrestling industry itself, a business where trust is a fragile commodity and partnerships, both in and out of the ring, are often transactional. Zenk, who viewed wrestling as a business, felt betrayed by his partner's alleged greed. Martel, who viewed Zenk as a protégé, believed the younger wrestler was simply not tough enough to handle the demands of the business. Both men had their truth, and neither ever reconciled. Zenk passed away in 2017, and with his death, any hope of a reunion or a definitive resolution to their story vanished forever. Today, when wrestling fans discuss the great what-ifs, the Can-Am Connection almost always comes up. What if they had stayed together? What if they had won the titles? The story of Rick Martel and Tom Zenk is a cautionary tale, a powerful reminder that even in a world of predetermined outcomes, real-life drama, betrayal, and broken trust can create a story far more compelling and far more tragic than anything a writer could ever script. It's a story of two men on the cusp of greatness whose dreams of superstardom were ultimately erased not by an opponent in the ring, but by the very real demons of ambition and betrayal that lurked just outside of it. And in wrestling, as in life, sometimes the greatest battles are the ones you never see.